Young doctors who might be struggling with debt, this video is for you. Now, recently, I was on midnight rounds and one of my residents asked me, Dr. Patel, what do you wish you had done differently during residency? And casually, I was like, I wish I had regularly invested in the SP 500, even if it was a small amount, like $50 to $100 a week. And I wish I paid more attention to budgeting. And my residents stopped and looked at me surprised, which didn't surprise me because medical students and residents get little to no financial training. When it comes to being a financially savvy doctor, I'm in a much better place now. I'm no Warren Buffett protégé, and I'm not one of those doctor turned real estate crypto angel investor types, but I'm in a good position because I budget, save, and invest. Now, I started doing all this when I was 36 years old, and I'm 39 now, so I definitely wish I had started much sooner. Here's why this all matters. In 2023, the average medical school debt was $202,000. This stings me no matter how many times I read it. And about 70% of medical students graduate with some debt. And according to a 2024 Medscape Burnout and Depression report, finances are a major contributing factor to burnout. Medical school debt has also been shown to impact academic performance and may influence which specialties students choose. With all that being said, I wanted to ask a professional what financial moves a young doctor should make right now, today. Now, this isn't one of those financial mistakes every doctor should avoid video. It's more about actionable items. Let's get into it.
My name is Marshall Weintraub. I'm a financial planner with a firm called Finity Group, and I work with a lot of doctors, almost exclusively doctors, and began working with most of them early on in their careers, some even as far back as med school, but a lot in residency and fellowship. So I've been doing this for over 12 years, and a lot of this stuff just really isn't taught formally throughout any sort of medical education. So I think it can be very helpful to meet with a professional.
I asked Marshall what 3 financial moves every young doctor should make. Here's the first piece of advice.
So number one, I would recommend you look into and obtain disability insurance, and specifically individual own occupation disability insurance. And the reason for that is that, as you know, doctors spend like 1,000 years becoming physicians through all of their training. You invest a lot of time and energy and money into your skill set, and doctors have a lot of income to be earned over their careers. And so it'd be very unfortunate if some sort of fluke, illness, or injury took all that away from you. And so from my professional view, obtaining an individual policy not tied to your employer that goes with you if you change jobs, and that has what we call own occupation language, and that just means it protects you as a physician in your specialty. That's very important because you can save and invest all you want, but if a disability takes your career away from you, you're going to be tapping into your investments very quickly.
I remember going to a lunch seminar and somebody brought up disability insurance, and I thought, okay, cool, my hospital gives me coverage, I'm fine. The only reason I got own specialty insurance is because a close friend looked into it, it made sense to me, and I went after it. Now, this will obviously differ from individual to individual, but it's worth knowing about.
Number two would be to research your options and form a plan for your student loan. Most physicians coming out of training have some sort of student loan balance. I've seen quite impressive balances, some north of $500,000, and so it's very important to know what your options are. For some physicians, going for public service loan forgiveness or PSLF can be a great way to go if your desired employment qualifies for that. For other physicians, either their employer or the region that they work in, like some mountainous states, Wyoming, Montana, for example, have state-based LRPs or loan repayment programs. Typically, if you work with an underserved population, they may kick $20,000 or $30,000 or more per year to you to help pay off your student loans as part of your employment. So good to be aware of those options if you may be working in a qualified nonprofit for PSLF or some other employer where there's a loan repayment program attached to your employment. Now, if neither of those work for you, and you may be going maybe more of a private practice or for-profit route, then it can sometimes make sense to look into refinancing your student loans to a lower interest rate with a private lender. That could end up saving you a lot of interest over your loan balance. You just want to be very careful with that because it's a one-way street. And once you refinance your federal direct loans, which are eligible for PSLF with a private lender, then you can't go back and try and qualify for PSLF if your career takes you in that direction. So you want to be very careful before you refinance to a private lender. But if you will be paying off your student loans yourself, and there's no other form of loan forgiveness or repayment coming elsewhere, then refinancing can save a lot of interest.
Oh, I can relate to this topic. I almost refinanced my loans, but I didn't. Thank God, because instead, I stayed on faculty at a few 501c3 hospitals, part-time. I put all the hours together, and last year, my loans were forgiven thanks to public service loan forgiveness. But I do have friends and colleagues who have made mistakes simply because they didn't know their options. And last but not least, here's another financial tip from Marshall.
Number 3, I would say, is home buying. When I meet with a lot of early career physicians, most of them mention buying a home as being a top priority within the first 3 to maybe 5 years post-training, because you guys have largely rented through med school and residency and Navy fellowship, and we're just ready to buy a home. What is very important during the home buying process is that you come up with a very honest assessment of your cash flow or your budget to see what you can afford for your monthly payment while not sacrificing your other goals. And that would be things like traveling for a lot of folks, maybe saving for retirement or college for children. You'd also want to budget in future things, like if you don't have any children now, but you plan to grow your family, well, okay, how much should we earmark for childcare? Or how much should we earmark for higher student loan payments post-training? And so what I tell people is you want to basically put together kind of your ideal world with your cash flow, vacations, long-term savings, other expenses, and then we can back in and see, okay, how much can I really afford with my monthly mortgage payment? And then we can reverse solve and say, okay, well, that results in like a $1 million home purchase or more or less. So that's kind of how you want to do it to avoid becoming house poor, and that would then lead you to maybe sacrificing some of your other goals.
When I was in residency, I was not thinking about home ownership. Simple budgeting and paying rent was hard enough. I remember a financial advisor talked to us about the 50-30-20 rule, where 50% of your income was supposed to go to essentials, 30% to wants, and the other 20% to go to savings and paying off debt. Well, I took home about $30,000 to $40,000 a year after tax. My rent was $1,100 a month, and this is all on top of carrying 6 figures of debt. So I was not saving a lot of money at all. One very productive step I did take, thanks to advice from a friend, is I set up an automatic transfer of $200 every other week to go from my checking account to my savings account, to just kind of set it and forget it. I thought that was a good move, but in hindsight, I wish I'd invested that money, or at least part of it, put it in the S&P 500, or shoot, Bitcoin, but who knew back then? So I asked Marshall about his opinion about residents getting involved in investing. Bonus, here's another tip.
I love that advice because the biggest part is that it helps you establish a good habit of living below your means and putting away some money on a regular basis for much later in life. I think that's the biggest thing, is getting in those good habits and building on them. In terms of setting up a regular investment plan, even a small dollar amount, love that even more. And I do think something like an S&P 500 index fund, which invests in roughly 500 of the largest US companies or stocks, is a great way to go about it. I kind of liken the S&P 500 like a pair of blue jeans. They're never going to go out of style. And so it's a great way to get in the habit of investing, benefit from the kind of long-term stock market appreciation, and also get used to maybe seeing some of your money take the occasional short-term dip and not freaking out and seeing it then rebound and recover over time. So I really like that advice from a habit building standpoint, but also I do think it's a great way to grow your wealth, even if you begin with a small dollar amount.
The reality is, very few medical schools and residency programs have financial curricula. even though a basic understanding of investing, loan repayments, contract negotiations, and more can reduce burnout and set young doctors up for financial success. So here's a hot take. To all those programs out there who are paying attention to residency, burnout, quality of life, and creating wellness programs, how about in addition to the lunches, hikes, and yoga sessions, we set aside time and resources to teach residents how to best manage their dollars? What do you think? Comment below.